Okay, so you want to build the most lucrative technological monopoly in the entire medieval world. You have discovered a secret manufacturing formula that turns worthless beach sand into clear, transparent crystal, a material so rare and coveted that kings, popes, and sultans will gladly trade entire chests of gold for a single goblet. There is just one massive problem. The state has realized that your brain holds the ultimate economic weapon. To prevent your secret from ever leaking to foreign rivals, the government forcibly relocates you and every single glassmaker in the city to a tiny isolated island in the middle of a muddy lagoon. High-walled guard towers watch the waters day and night. The secret police monitor your every conversation. And the law is explicitly clear. If you attempt to escape the island or teach your trade to an outsider, state assassins will hunt you down across the European continent and cut your throat. How do you transform an open-air prison camp into a multi-billion-dollar financial empire when leaving your physical workplace is a crime punishable by death? To understand how a handful of lockdown artisans managed to control the global luxury market for over 3 centuries, you first have to dismantle the modern myth of glass. Today, we view glass as cheap, disposable, and ubiquitous. We drink out of it, throw it in recycling bins, and look through it without giving it a second thought. But in the year 1291, clear glass was the equivalent of enriched uranium or microchip semiconductors. It was the highest tier of proprietary technology on planet Earth. Most medieval glass was cloudy, green-tinted, full of air bubbles, and brittle. But on the island of Murano, located just a mile north of Venice, master craftsmen unlocked the exact chemical ratio required to create cristallo, the world's very first completely colorless, perfectly transparent glass. To the medieval mind, this was not mere craftsmanship. It was practical alchemy. Holding a crystal glass object was like holding frozen light. At first glance, the Venetian government claimed that moving every glass furnace to Murano was a matter of public safety. In 1291, the Great Council of Venice issued a decree stating that the intense heat from glass furnaces posed an unacceptable fire hazard to the city's timber-framed houses. But that was merely the official PR cover story. The real reason was industrial espionage. Venice was a commercial republic run by hyper-calculating merchant oligarchs. They realized that if a single master glassmaker was bribed by the King of France or the Holy Roman Emperor, Venice would lose its absolute monopoly overnight. By marooning the entire industry on Murano, the Venetian state created the world's first high-security corporate research facility. You might think that locking workers on an island would destroy their productivity or cause instant revolt. Wrong. Cross that out. The Venetian Republic understood human psychology far better than that. They did not just use the stick. They crafted the ultimate golden cage. If you were a master glassmaker on Murano, you were given extraordinary privileges that no ordinary commoner in feudal Europe could ever dream of holding. You were granted total immunity from local prosecution for minor crimes. You were permitted to carry swords, a privilege strictly reserved for the aristocracy. Most shockingly, your daughters were allowed to marry into the highest Venetian noble families, bestowing noble bloodlines upon humble furnace workers. The Republic effectively bribed its artisans with social nobility, high wages, and elite prestige, turning them into willing partners in a state-sanctioned cartel. But the golden cage had iron bars. If an artisan grew greedy and attempted to flee Murano to set up a rogue furnace in Paris, London, or Vienna, the full apparatus of Venetian intelligence was unleashed. The feared Council of Ten, the secret executive committee of Venice, maintained a vast network of spies across Europe. Runaway glassmakers were tracked to foreign cities, given one final warning to return, and if they refused, paid assassins executed them with quiet efficiency. The message was absolute. You could live like a lord on Murano, or you could die like a traitor abroad. Now, how did this lockdown island actually generate billions in trade value? It comes down to 3 brilliant economic mechanics and clever legal loopholes that bypass traditional feudal trade barriers. The first mechanism was the absolute control of raw inputs. You cannot make crystal clear glass with just any sand and ash. Murano glassmakers used pristine quartz pebbles gathered from the beds of the Ticino and Brenta rivers, which were meticulously pulverized into fine white powder. But the true secret ingredient was soda ash derived from the burned residue of specific halophyte plants growing in the Levantine marshes of Syria and Egypt. Venice used its vast naval fleet to buy up every single ounce of Levantine plant ash at the source, starving every other European country of the vital chemical flux needed to melt silica at workable temperatures. Even if a rival city managed to kidnap a Venetian glassblower, that city could not replicate the glass because Venice controlled the global supply chain of Syrian soda ash. The second legal loophole was the creation of the podesta system and internal guild governance. The Murano glassmakers were granted self-governing jurisdiction over their island. They had their own chancellor, their own legal courts, and their own coin minting rights. This allowed the glassmakers to strictly regulate production volume, freeze wages for apprentices, and prevent internal price wars. No furnace was allowed to operate during the summer months, protecting worker health and artificially limiting global supply to keep prices at astronomical highs. By choking supply and maintaining immaculate quality standards, a single ornate glass goblet could fetch the equivalent of 10 years of a master carpenter's salary. The third and most devastating economic mechanism was the invention of the flat glass mirror. Before the 14th century, humanity had never seen a crisp, accurate reflection of itself. People looked into polished bronze, dark water, or crude convex lead plates that warped their features. In the mid-15th century, Murano master Angelo Barravier perfected a technique using an amalgam of tin and mercury applied to thin sheets of flat crystallo glass. For the first time in human history, human beings could look into a mirror and see their exact, unblemished image. The psychological effect on European royalty was electric. Mirrors became the ultimate status symbol of power, wealth, and vanity. To own a full-length Murano mirror was to signal that your treasury was practically bottomless. A single Venetian mirror purchased by the French aristocracy cost more than a prime agricultural estate complete with a chateau and peasant villages. Think the glassmakers were content with just selling expensive mirrors to rich lords? Wrong. Cross that out. They leveraged their glass dominance into an entirely new market that reshaped world history: optical instruments. When Venetian glassmakers perfected the grinding of convex and concave glass lenses, they unwittingly created the foundational hardware for the scientific revolution. In the late 13th century, spectacle lenses were invented, instantly doubling the productive lifespan of every literate scholar, merchant, monk, and clerk in Europe. Prior to spectacles, an intellectual or merchant was effectively retired by age 45 due to presbyopia. Murano lenses allowed the intellectual elite of Europe to continue reading, writing, and calculating well into their 60s and 70s, accelerating European economic and scientific development past every rival empire. For nearly 300 years, this economic engine pumped unimaginable wealth into the Venetian treasury. Millions of gold ducats flowed into the lagoon, fueling the Venetian navy, funding massive architectural monuments, and securing Venice's position as the financial capital of the Mediterranean. But no monopoly lasts forever. When you build an empire on total secrecy and physical coercion, systemic fragility slowly builds up beneath the surface, waiting for a single crack to trigger a catastrophic collapse. That crack opened wide in the 17th century through a combination of state-sponsored industrial espionage, royal corruption, and a devastating geopolitical shift. Jean-Baptiste Colbert, the cunning finance minister to King Louis XIV of France, realized that France was bleeding millions of gold leaves every year purchasing Venetian mirrors for royal palaces. Colbert decided to break the Venetian monopoly once and for all. Using secret agents and massive bribes of gold, Colbert successfully smuggled 4 master glassmakers off the island of Murano under the cover of night and transported them straight to Paris. The Venetian Council of Ten went into full panic mode. They deployed assassins to poison the defector glassmakers in Paris, killing 2 of them in a desperate attempt to protect the secret. But it was too late. The surviving defectors had already taught French artisans the core chemical formulas and flat casting techniques. Shortly after, the French established the Royal Glass Works, casting the famous mirrors that would line the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles. Venice's exclusive hold on the global mirror trade vanished almost overnight. To make matters worse, a powerful new rival emerged from the dense forests of Bohemia. German chemists developed Bohemian crystal, a heavy, brilliantly clear potassium lime glass that was far harder than Venetian cristallo. While Murano glass was soft, delicate, and designed for intricate hot-worked shapes, Bohemian glass could be deeply cut, engraved, and faceted like real diamonds. European taste shifted dramatically from delicate Venetian lace glass to heavy, gleaming Bohemian cut crystal. Venice's revenue plummeted as orders from royal courts dried up across the continent. The final death blow arrived not from trade rivals, but from military conquest. In 1797, Napoleon Bonaparte marched his revolutionary armies into Venice, bringing a brutal end to the 1100-year-old Venetian Republic. Napoleon dissolved the ancient Glassmakers Guild, tore down the restrictive trade barriers, and stripped Murano of its privileged status. The secret formulas were published, the furnaces were extinguished, and the once mighty island of captive artisans was reduced to an impoverished relic of a bygone age. Yet, despite the total destruction of the Venetian Republic and the collapse of its state-enforced cartel, the legacy of Murano glass did not perish. The island's forced confinement of genius produced a ripple effect that permanently transformed human civilization. You were never just watching a story about luxury goblets and secret sand formulas. You were watching the story of how a tiny island of trapped craftsmen created the fundamental building blocks of modern science. Without Murano's relentless obsession with glass purity, Hans Lippershey would never have had the high-quality glass lenses required to construct the first practical telescope in 1608. Without Murano glass, Galileo Galilei could never have observed the moons of Jupiter, demolishing the geocentric view of the universe. Without Murano glass, Antony van Leeuwenhoek could never have ground the delicate lenses that revealed the existence of microscopic bacteria, laying the groundwork for modern medicine. The Venetian Republic tried to chain its artisans to an island to accumulate gold, but in doing so, they inadvertently gave humanity the exact lens it needed to see the universe. The next time you look through a window, check your smartphone screen, adjust your eyeglasses, or read about a deep space discovery made by space telescopes, remember the locked-down furnace workers of Murano. They proved that even when you trap human ingenuity on a prison island, the light it creates will eventually break through the dark and illuminate the entire world.